Hi, I'm Betty McLean, and welcome to Healthcare Hope, a podcast for nurses. With 2 decades of bedside experience and now as a certified burnout coach, I understand the challenges nurses face. I believe that all stress is manageable and burnout is not inevitable. Join me in building strength for yourself and hope for the future of our industry. And we are back with another episode, and this is our next guest episode. So today we have Madison, and I worked with Madison when I was in the hospital setting, and I just always admired her as someone who always brought a lot of really positive energy. And I've left the hospital where I worked with her, but I continue to watch her on social media and all of her fun adventures. So I wanted her to come on and talk about her experience in healthcare. We'll talk a little bit about how we see the future of nursing and where it's headed. So, Madison, welcome and tell us about yourself.
I am now on year 4 of nursing finally, but healthcare is not new to me. I did healthcare for a long time before, since about 14 when I was volunteering, and then I became a CNA for like 6 years before I was a nurse. But the hospital was my first nursing job. I remember when I was a student and you helped me put in my first Foley, and you gave me like the best experience because you were so kind and caring. You're a very good teacher. And I'm not just saying that to be nice, I genuinely mean it. I had a good experience with that. I now am lead nurse and I have been for about a year. And I kind of have taken it upon myself to try to do kind of a staff action, nurse practice council, all those kinds of things to try to help keep positivity and make things efficient and whatnot. And it's kind of helped me keep motivated, because when I was just doing that, just being a floor nurse and stuff like that, not that there's anything wrong with that, but for me, I'm like, I feel like I needed more. I needed to be able to do something to continue on. So it's giving me a little bit of fuel.
Yeah. Well, and I think we all have areas where our personality and our skills best align. I know some nurses who have been bedside direct patient care, not lead nurse, not on councils and all that kind of stuff for years, and they just thrive at it. And then there are other nurses who are like, no, I need to add something to this. I need to be involved some other way in addition to that. So I love that you're like not just staying in one position thinking I can't do anything more. You're like, what else can I do here? What else? I need more. Like, I love that. I didn't realize that you had actually been in healthcare since you were a teen.
Yeah.
So was there a specific moment when you were like, yeah, I want to be a nurse, or was it something that you always like had in mind, or what brought you to healthcare, especially as a teen? What brought you into healthcare?
I think I wanted to be in healthcare since I was young. I didn't know I wanted to be a nurse necessarily. I actually wanted to be a cowboy. That didn't work out. I also wanted to be a judge because I thought I could tell people what to do, and I found out that's not it, and that's probably also not a great thing. And then nursing came along. I
Kind
moved
of
up.
like being a cowboy and a judge
Yeah,
sometimes, some
maybe
days.
all
A
three together,
little bit of a rodeo.
I ended up joining a group called Medical Explorers when I first moved over, or moved back to Washington, because I lived in Ohio for like 10 years. And it was a group for like age like 14-ish or 13 to I think about 18 was the max. 18 or 19. It's actually a Boy Scouts of America kind of like subgroup.
Okay.
I don't know if they still exist anymore, but it helped us. We were affiliated with the hospital. We're at Good Samaritan over in Puyallup. We had to do like 5 hours rotations of working with the transport and stuff so that we could learn the layout of the hospital. And then afterwards, you could do like subsets in different like departments and stuff. I did a lot with X-ray because I liked the people in there and whatnot. But as I was younger and stuff, I couldn't drive myself. There was limited time. So I feel like I didn't get a lot of absorption from that. And then we ended up moving over to the fire department where it was kind of the same thing, but we learned how to be first responders there as well. And I really liked that too. And I was like, it's kind of like I was just dipping my toes into what I was going to be trying to get into. And then I decided to go down the route of nursing because I knew that being on the front lines, like EMS, was going to be very rough. And so I went down the route of nursing. And then I decided to become a CNA. And I felt like that kind of helped me understand what I might be getting myself into with patient care, families and whatnot. And I feel like I've kind of done it all because I worked at a facility, long-term care and short-term care. I did
Mm,
home health, and then I went into the hospital setting as a
mm,
nurse. Um, I don't
yeah.
want to leave the hospital setting because I do feel like I get to do all kinds of skills and whatnot. And I think honestly, what got me started on all these things was it's cliche, but I like to help people and I like things medical, and that
Mm-hmm.
goes together, and
Mm-hmm.
nursing's perfect for that.
Love
I
that.
I feel like for me, I enjoy learning how to not just help people physically with whatever medical problems they might have, but like holistically on a sense of like, I want to take care of you as a person, not just a diagnosis. And nursing, you get to do that because you get to be there at the bedside
Yeah.
and you get to help them through that. And you're the one that sees them the most out of everyone and gets to
Mm-hmm.
really be consistently seeing them throughout the day. So I
Yeah.
do, for at least for bedside, that's what I like.
Yeah. Because healthcare is so encompassing, right? You can do X-ray, you can do first line, you can do there, I mean, and they're all so important, right?
Oh yeah.
Um, but nursing, and I'm right there with you. Like it does sound cliche, like I want to help people, but all of us are helping in our ways. They go to X-ray, they get excellent care, we get that image that we need, but they come back to us, right?
Yes.
They have a physical therapy session, they learn how to use their walker post-surgery, and then they come back to us, right?
Yeah.
And it's that throughout the day reinforcing what they've learned, reinforcing, that this is how you're going to care for yourself, all that education and and getting to treat them like you were saying, like holistically, like a person. You see
Yeah.
them when they're looking like overwhelmed and exhausted, and you get to just be like, it's okay, you're gonna get through it. Like we got you.
Yeah.
I do miss the hospital setting. It's interesting working in outpatient settings because it's the same. I'm finding it's the same thing. You're
Yeah.
meeting them where they're at. You're helping them understand what's going on. You're seeing them when they're overwhelmed, and you're like, we're gonna get through this. You're
Yeah.
okay. You do in the role that I'm in now, I get to see them when they're doing great
Hmm.
and say, yeah, keep going. It's time to try a little harder with those exercises. It's time to you're doing really good, so let's push you a little harder, right?
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
it's yeah, but it's all just it's all meeting the person where they're at, right? And
Yeah.
giving and trying to figure out what do you need in this moment.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because every person's going to be different with what they
Yeah.
need or how they respond to learning how to, I don't use the word manipulate, but figuring out what's the best way to help adapt to how they're going to receive
Mhm.
information. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Do you have a specific story that has stuck in your head over the years of a patient or a colleague that just impacted you in a really meaningful, positive way? I mean, I know we've all had those experiences that have impacted us in negative ways, and I think those are important to share as well. Um, I like I like my clients to share those with me so that we can work through them, right? A good
Yeah.
therapist or a good coach is going to be able to help you deal with the trauma that we deal with. Um,
Hmm.
but one thing that I really enjoy is thinking back on the positive things that have happened, the patients who really just had a beautiful impact, or the colleagues that had a really beautiful impact, because it helps me stay in that mindset of I'm where I belong,
Right.
to focus on the good. Do you have anything that stands out to you?
I have two short stories I'll tell you.
Okay.
The first one helps with my motivation to keep wanting to advocate for my patients. I had a
Mm,
patient who had a brain mass, and it was something I was not, even though we're now the neuro unit, I wasn't super familiar with how to understand what was happening. He was fluctuating with his mentation,
mm,
lots of things going on. And I kept saying, something's not right, something's not right, something's not right. And I had a great lead. I had a great team. I don't, my manager wasn't involved that day, but my manager, she's wonderful. But I kept advocating about all the stuff going on. And finally, we ended up having to do a rapid assessment team multiple times. Unfortunately, the doctor did not show up. And this was the doctor I did not have a lot of confidence in. And that's why I
mm,
was over talking about all the concerns that I had.
yeah,
And the patient ended up going to ICU, and the ICU nurse had said, like, it is a good thing that you advocated because this patient probably wouldn't have made it
mm,
another 5, 10 minutes. And I mean, not to say that he wouldn't have been resuscitated, but it definitely, like, it just made me feel so good that I'm like, okay, I wasn't over exaggerating. Just because the doctor wasn't listening to what I had to say didn't mean that I was wrong in what I thought. And it really,
Mhm.
and that patient ended up being on a vent. And I would go up and visit, and I prayed over him and everything. And I found out later that day, after I had prayed over him and everything, that he came off the vent and was talking and everything, and he was going to have to go, like, pulled the plug afterwards and stuff. And it just reinstilled to me that what I'm feeling, gut feeling, is it's true. Another one is humbling experience, which I will continue to repeat for the rest of my life. But
Yeah.
I had a patient who we were just not getting along. And I could be a little spicy sometimes, and my mouth
You
speaks,
can.
before the filter goes through.
So just,
But
yeah,
yeah, just a
sometimes.
little. But him and I just were not, we were just butting heads, and I just didn't like the way he was talking to me. And so I was trying to, kind of insinuate, like, you can't talk to me that way, but I probably wasn't doing it the best. And we just kept butting heads. And then I don't remember what happened, but I think I came back into the room after multiple times and stuff. And we finally kind of came to a head about things. And then he had told me, he's like, I'm sorry for, the way I've been kind of talking to you. It's a year since my wife had passed. And I'm just like, on the inside, I'm like, gosh, why'd you have to be so rude, Maddie? You didn't need to be such a stickler and have this assumption that he's just mean because he wants to be mean and stuff. And I mean, some people, they shouldn't act like that. But the moral of it is, it's me relearning that you don't always know what people are going through, and treating people with kindness and respect and whatnot. And even if you're not coming to an agreement about things, at least coming about it in a more kind way. I probably could have been a little bit softer in how I approach things. And now I'm slowly learning, after each event that I have, that there's different ways to approach things.
Yeah.
And I remember he ended up going home and whatnot, and I helped him put his shoes on and everything. And we kind of came to a moment, we both kind of shed a tear, had a little hug and everything. And I was actually looking for the picture the other day when I was
Mm.
thinking about the story, and I was telling my coworker about it, and I look off into the distance, and on one of the screens was like a prayer that I related to, and that was like speaking about this exact situation. And
Mm.
I swear, I was like, something is going on in the air here,
Mm. I
because
love it.
it's definitely, I don't know. But those things, I've repeated similar stories, but those two really stick with me
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah. So with a patient who's being rude, who's being whatever, condescending or whatever, so often it is coming from a place of hurt, right?
Yes,
And
it's
and
misplacement for sure.
yeah, yeah, so often. And the the trick there is to not accept the behavior. You can't speak to me that way. I don't care if you're hurting. You can't be aggressive. You
Yeah.
cannot be belligerent. I'm a human too.
Yeah.
But when we come at it with the same energy that they're bringing, we don't open up space, right? For them to say, it's been a year since my wife died,
Yeah.
right?
And that's probably what I've struggled with the most is
Yeah.
when the first couple of years, like, so this is year 4 now, actually, this month. And
Nice.
I think the first year, especially into the second and developing into the third, it was very much like, our floor, it became very difficult. And especially as neuro, we were getting all the strokes, and we're getting a lot of 1910 patients lately. And we're
Mm.
just getting a lot of stuff is very difficult to manage on a social level. Medical stuff, for me, I can handle it all day.
Yeah.
But this social stuff, it's really becoming, I think, an issue, which is contributing to a lot of exhaustion and fatigue. And, like, I'm having compassion fatigue here and
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and trying to figure out how to not, deal with that with myself and not put it
Hmm.
on other people. It's
Hmm.
very difficult sometimes. And I have to, like, step back and think, like, just because I might be having compassion fatigue doesn't mean that I need to put that on either my coworkers or my patients. And it's really hard sometimes to figure out how to continue to have compassion for those who continue to mistreat you, even when you try to set boundaries too, those things
Hmm.
can be kind of difficult.
Yeah,
So it's
it
definitely a
is.
learning curve.
It's really hard with patients who have those neuro issues and the psychosocial issues where uh, they really do. They're it's not they're just having a bad day, right? There's stuff going on, and it's very hard to be compassionate over the long haul with those kind of patients. One thing that I've really appreciated that I've noticed, and you can maybe speak to this, I might be making an assumption, but it seems like you do a good job of when you're not at work, you are taking care of yourself. I
I'm
see
trying in
I
every way
I see a
possible.
lot of, you're at the park, you're playing with your cat, you're hiking, you're doing these things. And that's when I'm talking with clients who are in complete burnout and they are 100% in compassion fatigue um and they're so often we get to the point where we're so burnt out that we can't take care of we can't think of what do I try next?
Yeah.
How do I keep this from spilling on to my coworkers? You get to a point if you're not taking care of yourself that you get to the point where you can't make these decisions like how or be creative and think about how can I take care of myself. So it looks to me, again, from like we were talking about, social media is kind of our only way we stay connected right now. It looks to me like you're trying different things and you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
What are things that are you doing that intentionally? I guess that's my first question. And what are some things you do to renew yourself, to keep yourself balanced and well?
Some of it's intentional, some of it's just because it's things I enjoy doing, regardless if I'm having compassion fatigue or if I'm completely full tank. I definitely like right now, I'm actually, you can't see it, but I am painting right now. I'm actually painting a binder. My boyfriend and I are reaching our 1 year on Sunday. So I wanted to make a cute little album and paint on it and everything. So, but those kinds
Love
of
it.
things give me joy outside
Mm.
of work. If I could do it at work, I'd do it too. That's why we had that big mural with a coloring wall
Yeah.
for a while. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um even besides outside of work, traveling and hiking and swimming and doing all those kinds of things that help relieve stress because they're things that I enjoy doing. I even try to do them a little bit at work. Like I enjoy doing like having something to look forward to, like a goal. That is kind of me in a nutshell. Having
Yeah.
a goal kind of helps me keep on track of being motivated and that I feel like I'm making a difference in something. And I think we all have that in our root as nurses or healthcare in general is you're doing this because you want to make a difference. If you didn't want that, I don't think a lot of people would do this job because it's hard. It's hard. All healthcare is hard. Um, I know at work I'm coming up with different projects about how to meet the criteria of this a little bit easier. How can I
Mhm.
make this more efficient? How can I make this more clear? We're actually coming up with like an RN Bible
Yeah.
because there's so many things that like with my preceptor when I first started, I didn't learn those things.
Yeah.
And another person was teaching those, and every preceptor is going to teach a little bit differently or have
Yeah.
an emphasis on one thing over another.
Right.
And I feel like having those references and learning to work through those things and whatnot, that's what I do at work. And then outside is travel and all those things. So
Yeah.
it
I
makes me feel better for sure.
Yeah, I love that. The one of the things I teach is creating a stress management protocol. And so I have my clients do what you're doing, but intentionally.
Hmm.
So saying, if I'm this stressed, here's my protocol. If I'm good and great, here's my protocol. Here's my maintenance and here's my when I'm acutely stressed, here's my, and creating an actual protocol for yourself. And some people need that. Some people
Yeah.
like I said, do it more naturally. Tell me a little bit about the Nurse Practice Council. You kind of alluded to it. What about your job currently that does give you that hope for the future of healthcare? Like, what is it about? Is it your job and that kind of stuff that gives you hope, or is it something else entirely?
For nurse practice council, with the staff action that we do, like on our unit, kind of talking with the team. So this is the floor nurses and the CNAs, really, if they want to come up with either, honestly, I actually want to hear people's complaints as long as there's some kind of solution we can come up with and it's not just a tea party here. But hearing like what needs to be changed, what do we need to address, what can we do to make this better, and then come up with those things. And then going to nurse practice council where we're going to have our director of nursing, our educator, our other possibly other managers, other staff members from other floors, or even on our own floor, night shift, day shift, those kinds of
Mm,
things. And it helps kind of come along with like what new policies are coming up that we need to be aware of, what new trials are coming up. It's almost like a staff meeting in a sense of like telling us what's going to happen, but it's also a place to throw out ideas or projects and get a little feedback, or saying, oh, we've done that before. These are the barriers we ran into. And I honestly, I don't think I could ever be management necessarily, but I do enjoy figuring out projects and how to overcome the barriers and how, like, what step-by-step process do I need to do. And definitely
mm,
what I have experienced on my own that I'm trying to use is, I know that when you roll out a project, you don't want to hear it from management. You don't want to be like, oh, okay, here's this packet, read this, this is what's going to happen, and you're going to do it. No one likes that.
no.
So I don't want to be that way either, even though I'm
Yeah.
from the floor. So I've been asking people, like, I have like an acuity thing that I've been working on where I'm like, okay, when you come and give me updates at 3, 4 p.m., I want you to tell me on a scale of 0 or like maybe 0 to 4 or 1 to 4, how heavy care is your patient? Because
Mm,
I'd have people complaining like, "Oh, my assignment's really heavy. Like you gave me 4 Hoyer patients or something."
right.
And to me, I'm like, I'm juggling so many different things that it was honestly not intentional.
Yes.
And so those things and we all know there's so many miscommunications in healthcare where I don't know if you can have an intentional miscommunication, but everything's unintentional. And I know I've been the person that assumes, oh, they just gave me heavy cares because they're mad at me, or
Right.
or
Yeah.
because they think I can handle it, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
So today I joined their meeting this morning and we talked about a couple things we have for our 1910 policy for patients of substance abuse, and there's a couple other things tied into that. We're having issues of people coming up and either not checking in at our desk because
Mm,
maybe no one's up there, or they know and then they slip around or something. So we're
mm,
trying to instill this thing I've called badge buddies, where it's
mm,
a little like clip-on badge thing. It's orange, it's bright, you can see it. So that when I go into my patient's room, whether I'm on the floor or as lead, and I know that it's a 1910 room, and I look and I see, oh, like they clearly haven't checked in because we didn't give them a little orange thing. Hey, can you
right.
come in and check in with me? And if there's
Yeah.
any issues with that, then we'll call security. But at
Yeah.
that point, then I know who's checking in, and then hopefully it'll also incite them to check out because they'll need to give that bad badge back because nobody checks out either. And so you're like,
Right.
well, who's coming and going? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I know that there's always resistance and trials, and so I'm trying to cope with that. Like I don't have any degree in like, management or business or project management, and so this is all just kind of trial and error from what I've seen and what I've done in the past, or from my bachelor's degree in nursing. But it motivates me to try to do more. I am having slight difficulty because no one's wanting to participate, but
Mm,
I feel that my whole floor, well, not my floor, but the whole floor that I work on is very burnt out and having issues with, either we have really new nurses, or we have nurses that are like, look, I don't want to meet outside of work. I don't want to do it while I'm at work because I'm not getting paid extra to do that. And I get it. But I'm like,
mhm.
help me help you and
Yeah. Yeah.
help me.
Yeah.
So I
I
don't know. I
promise
am
this
having
was, yeah.
difficulty.
Yeah. It is hard because like I said, when people are in full burnout, like it's hard to you get to the point when you're in like the middle to late stage and definitely in what I call final stage, you get to the point where your brain just doesn't want to accept anything new. You're not in a
Yeah.
hopeful place. And it's
Yeah.
very difficult to engage in forward thinking and hopeful thinking and change because you're so depleted as far as your energy and your internal resources, right? I can see that being challenging. I think it's important to just continue to notice and to, you know, do what you can with your energy, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately we only have control of ourselves. right?
Yeah.
This is one thing I've always appreciated about your hospital is that they really do seem from a management perspective. I know specifically your manager, but generally speaking, most of the management there really do want what's best for both the patients and the staff, and
Yes.
that's hard to find.
It is really
Um,
hard to find.
yeah.
I feel like with my manager, especially lately and after I became lead, by the way, sorry, my cat's hanging out.
Hi,
So
cat.
um, she is a very personable kind of manager where
Yeah,
I feel like I can walk in her office at any time, talk to her
yeah.
about what I'm struggling with and or what I'm like identifying as needs to be addressed and whatnot. And she gives me encouragement. She shows me the right sources. She hears me out. And something I've learned from her, not only because she kind of told me, but I witnessed her do it with me, is even though I'm talking a lot right now, I've learned that when I need to address something or maybe confront someone with a concern or something, I've learned to listen more than talk. And something I also learned is I've in the past, I'd listen, but what I do is I'd spew all of my concerns first. And I know when
Mhm.
I'm on the other end of that, I'm like, wow, okay, that was a lot. You must have been holding that in. Like, I don't know how I feel right now. And so recently I've had somebody where I feel like they were just all over the place despite how many years they had been a nurse. And and then every time they came to me with a problem and stuff, they weren't even formulating the question yet. They were just spewing it. And to me,
Mhm.
I'm like, that's kind of like, that's a lot of anxiety on myself because it's a
Right.
consistent thing. And then when I would give them my opinion, they would not take it or advice and stuff. And I'm like, and then they'd ask the person next to me, and I'm like, that kind of hurts my feelings because it feels like you don't trust my judgment and you do this very often. So why are you even asking me anyway? And
Yeah.
so instead of taking my hurt feelings and just spewing them, I pulled them aside at the end of the day and I asked, how do you feel like your day went today? And I let them talk and I listened and stuff. And then she was kind of in a good mood. And, they were like, I feel like even with all these things, it wasn't a bad day. And I said, okay. And I was like, I'd just like to talk to you about a couple things. I'm not mad or anything, but, X, Y, and Z. And she was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. And I didn't know I came across that way. And I felt like it was kind of my duty to tell her those things, not because I'm angry, but because if I'm feeling that way, other people might, and they might not be as kind in the way that they deliver that news. And I want her to be able to grow.
Yeah.
She's young, she's just starting in nursing, and she's got ways to go. So I feel like we had a good conversation and we even hugged at the end and she felt better and I felt better. And learning how to approach those situations it's given me motivation too to continue, like, okay, every single time I come across these things, it's a learning opportunity. And
Yeah.
sometimes I take a hit and I don't do well, and sometimes I do really well, and it makes
Yeah.
me feel better. Like I even messaged my boss and my assistant manager too about it because I was like, I did it. I did peer review. I tried to tackle it instead of coming to you about it, and it
Yeah.
went really well. And it made me feel accomplished.
Yeah. I
Something
love
that made
that.
me feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. Well, and I love that because honestly, without the times when it didn't go well and we kind of mess up, it's really hard to compare the successes, right? If we
Mhm.
haven't had the like fall on our face moments. So life is all about 50-50. Like
And it's a
the
silver lining deal too.
real,
It's just
yeah.
like, don't every time that you have a bad experience and things, which I've had many in this job and inside
Hmm.
of itself, but I'm like, each time I look at that, I'm like, okay, that's where I probably slipped up. Maybe I should try it this way next time. Like, it
Yes.
doesn't have to be gosh, I did awful or I messed up on that. I shouldn't have done that. Don't say should, just say how you can fix it. What
Yes.
can you learn from this experience? I've
Yes.
had many and I still have many to go.
Well, and
So,
we never stop learning,
no.
right? Till our dying day, we will
Yeah.
continue to have moments, but your mindset is exactly where it needs to be because so often I see this especially with nurses because we want to be perfect. We want to not make mistakes. Then
Mhm.
when we do make a mistake, we're like, "Oh my God, I should have done better," right? I say, "Stop shoulding on yourself." Um,
That's right. That's
right?
right.
So it's like, um, Oh, and you spend all this energy in like beating up on yourself for not being perfect.
Mhm.
Whereas if you can learn to what you've learned is to take that energy and instead of beating up on yourself, be like, okay, okay, what am I going to take from that? How am I going to do it differently next time? Right. Um, my coach calls it failing forward. Right. It's
Yeah,
that concept of like I failed, but I'm moving forward with it instead of beating myself up about it.
exactly.
That's in I have a podcast coming out. I don't know when this one's gonna drop. It may have already been come out, but about the difference between perfectionism versus excellence.
Mhm.
Excellence says, "Yeah, I messed up, and I'm gonna do better next time because I want to provide excellent care." Excellent care, there's some mistakes that happen,
Yes.
but it's all about that forward learning. What did I learn here? Did I just uncover a safety problem and we need to create a new protocol, right?
Mhm.
Like, wh y how are we gonna
I've had that.
yeah,
I
right?
pushed a med a little too fast because I did the math wrong. Oops.
Uh-huh.
And
Yep.
I owned up to it. I even like at first I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is all wrong, blah blah." And I looked back and I was like, "Oh, there was supposed to be another 0 on that, blah blah blah." And and I felt like I was a little embarrassed, of course. And
Oh
I even had
gosh,
a
yeah.
student that day, and I'm like, I literally had just got done
Oh,
saying double check everything, and I'm like, "Wow, okay."
yeah.
But I learned from that. I was like, I want other people to know about my mistakes so that they don't make that mistake.
Yes, I love that. That is the difference between perfectionism thinking, thinking that leads to burnout,
Mhm.
versus that excellence thinking of like, I'm gonna make this okay. I'm gonna figure out how to make this work, right? I love
Yeah.
that. I love that you've got the mindset. You said, I don't know about management. I'm like, I want her running the hospital. Like, I'm like, put that girl in management. Let's
If I didn't
go.
have to work Monday through Friday, I'd probably do it.
Right? I know that those 5-day a week people are amazing.
Oh, yeah.
No, I love that though. I love that though. Is there anything else that is just really exciting in your world right now that you want to share? Anything about being a nurse that you want to encourage people for? Anything before we wrap up?
Um, I think just finding out what motivates you
Yeah.
or what motivated you in the first place and
Mm,
just trying to find new things that are going to kind of resurface or rekindle that fire that you had. And for me, that was creating projects or looking into what can be better. How can I motivate people? Because then it also builds teamwork. And then you get to know people better. And like I've even pulled people outside. I tried putting a barbecue thing together as a team building thing. Unfortunately, it fell through, but I did try. So, but
yeah.
doing those things to try to help rekindle those fires and kind of I went through a period of time where even despite all these projects and stuff, I was still kind of feeling a little bit burnt out. I feel like every day it's, one day I'm really good and one day not so much. So I know that it's not a linear thing. We all know that with life in general. I
100%.
recently decided that the answer to my burnout, in addition to these little day-to-day things, was to go part-time and
Mm,
start at a home health company per diem.
yeah.
And although that was a huge step for me because I don't move jobs quickly, it's not something
Hmm.
I'm comfortable doing.
Same.
I take risks in other ways in life, but my job is something take a lot of time to figure out what the heck do I want to do.
Hmm.
And I was really scared to have that conversation with my boss, not because like I'm scared of her, but because I know that she's already having a tough time with staff retention. And I was like, this is not going to help her at all. And she's going to not that she's gonna feel blindsided, but, it's not something she was expecting necessarily, but, I feel like to preach to other people, don't be afraid to make a different stride, and I didn't wanna quit the hospital because that's my baby. That's, it's something I love, and I wanna keep growing with that, but taking maybe even just a year. Nothing in life is permanent. And just learning that
Absolutely.
that is something I'm learning because to me, I'm like every change I make, I'm like, oh, it's permanent. It's gonna be this way forever. I don't want to leave
Yeah.
the hospital. And I'm trying to teach myself it's not permanent.
Yeah.
You can leave for a little bit, if leave completely, you can go per diem, you can go part-time, you can move to a
Hmm.
different department. Nursing is so versatile.
Yes.
And I figure maybe just doing a little bit of home health, something that it's still
Mm,
stressful in its own way, but
yeah,
not
for
hospital
sure.
stressful.
Yeah.
And just doing 2 days at the hospital a week instead of 3. And
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't started yet, but I'm really hoping that that will be the answer for me. And I don't think
Mhm.
it'll be permanent. I'll probably come back to the hospital full time at some point, but
Yeah.
having an answer that makes me feel like, okay, I made a little bit of change. I've made a little bit of a difference. If it tanks, then I tried it.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I think sometimes we need a bit of a shakeup once in a while
mm,
just to help us get a new perspective on things. So I love that
absolutely.
you're like willing to try something new. Just like you said, you're probably going to be back full time at the hospital after a while. But either way, even if you find that home health is your passion and you're like, I'm here, let's go all in, taking that step, which it can be scary, right? But taking that
Hmm.
step to just shake things up a little bit is so important because it gives you it's the same thing with like when we take a vacation or we move to a new house or we hire a life coach. It just changes. We get so in a rut, right? And sometimes you just need that little bit of a shift to let your mind try something new so that you can
Yeah,
think something new so you can have a different result. So I
absolutely.
love that you're just like, let's shake it up. Let's see
Yeah.
what happens." That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I love that.
Even before all that too, I actually saw the life coach that we actually have through work,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and they had, and I'm sure you've done all the same things. They gave me some tools like a list of values and learning
Mhm.
how to
Mhm.
communicate what are your values, because
Mhm.
that'll help you understand interpersonal relationships so much better. Like learning it's kind of almost like a love language thing. What is your
Yeah.
love language? And for
Yeah.
me, it is words of affirmation
Mhm.
and, praises and stuff like that. Those things,
Yeah.
because it makes me feel better knowing that I feel appreciated for those things. And so when I don't feel appreciated, it makes me not want to, either it makes me try harder, unfortunately, or it
Yep.
makes me completely just like, nope, I'm not going to do that because I
Yeah.
don't feel appreciated for it. So just
Yeah.
learning those kinds of things. And I know life coaching has
Yeah.
been very helpful.
Yeah, it's so important because you get to know your internal motivation. Where are your thought errors, right?
Hmm.
Versus your thoughts that are helpful, right?
Yes,
And learning to
exactly.
double down on those helpful thoughts versus the ones that bring you results you really don't want. So
Yeah. And
I love
especially having somebody else who might not have a bias.
Yes,
I've been to my friends and my nurse friends and they understand me,
but
but
they
like
have a
someone like
bias.
you, yeah, someone like you, I know you, but I don't know you. And
Yes.
so you also being able to hear anything that I'm talking about, you have an outside perspective and you can
Mhm.
kind of hear maybe where I'm having a pattern of something that maybe I
Yes.
don't register because that's just I'm accustomed to that.
Mhm.
So I know that that's been helpful for
I
me,
think
especially.
I think that's a huge part of life coaching that I think people don't realize the value of it. When I love the example of when you go shopping to try on some new clothes, right? You take your new clothes and you go into the dressing room and you look at that mirror and you're like, I don't know. I mean, I guess they look good. I don't know. I don't know. And then you step into the hallway and your best friend's there. And she's like, "Oh, oh, no, no, no. No, go try the other one."
Yeah.
And you look at it in the mirror and you're like, "I think this one looks better. I don't know. I can't really tell." And you go into the hallway and she's like, "Oh my gosh, that's perfect," right?
Yeah.
Because we can look in a mirror all day long. It's not the same as getting an outside perspective,
a hundred
right?
percent.
Yeah. And we can see when you have a coach who's outside of you and isn't living in your life. I call it getting in the pool, right? But
Mhm.
they stay neutral and they don't get in the pool with you. They can say, "Oh, that thought, that's a good one. Double down on that."
Mhm.
Or, "Do you hear what you're saying every single
Yes.
day?
Yep.
Maybe that's the reason you're so unhappy."
Mhm.
Right? So
Exactly.
I love that you're tapping into those resources. That's so good.
Yeah.
I love
The shouldn't thing that you're talking about, she had used, instead of saying so and so should do this, you should say, I would like so and so to do this, because then it's not putting your expectations on somebody else. Which
yeah.
I'm like, sometimes I still get confused. I'm like, okay, what's expectations versus standards versus like, don't have the bare minimum set up. So it's still something I'm still learning every
Yeah.
day, but I
Yeah.
try to use those tools here and there of like, I wish security would come up a little faster for our patients that are not so great, instead of they should have been here, because that's a negative expectation or a negative
Absolutely.
perspective on something.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And it doesn't help.
No, it
anything.
doesn't.
It just adds a negativity to your life,
And
right?
anyone else around you
And
potentially.
anyone else
You're
around you,
giving
right?
them that bias, you're giving them that thought process,
Yeah.
and then they're already having a negative thought towards that department, that
Yeah.
person, that, whatever. And
Yeah.
I feel like I've been really good at being self-aware, especially in the last couple of years, and learning. If anything, I think one of the more important things is learning not to put negative energy on others. Like, what are you doing? How does it affect other people? And once you kind of learn that, then you can kind of learn, okay, well, I know that this part that's affecting other people is positive, so let's keep going. But what am
Yes.
I doing that might, something that I say, something that I do, something that I even just, nonverbal communication that I
Yeah.
do that might not be a positive impact on people. So
I love that. It really all does start with self-awareness.
a
Like
100%.
really, really does. So I love that. I love that you're just like bringing light into the world. Like it starts with us, right? And then
Yeah.
we go from there. So thank you
Sure.
so much for this
Oh, of
conversation. This
course.
has
This
been
is really
so
enjoyable.
delightful. So I will continue to follow along on all your exploits on social media and all your hikes and all your kitty adventures. So thank you for sharing your world with me, and thank you for sharing the last 45 minutes with me.
Of course. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening today. If you're ready for support and looking for a community of like-minded healthcare professionals, join me in my free private Facebook group called Healthcare Hope with Coach Betty. If you found this episode helpful or encouraging, please share it with your friends and fellow nurses. Subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Together, we can create strength for our lives and hope in healthcare.